Hey guys, how's it going? Ricky of Vinci. Thank you so much for joining. We have a quick little live stream planned. I was going to give a couple of people, give you guys a little bit of time to join and before we start here. But a little bit of bookkeeping. I'm actually headed to the Fully Charged show in Australia. I'm going to be joining them. You know, I'm the North American contributor for the Fully Charged team. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm a little nervous and stressed out because it turns out I needed a visa for Australia. I'm not used to. I should have checked, but I didn't do it until very late, and so now I'm up against the deadline. My flight is in 7 hours, and I don't have the approval email yet. I'm not sure if they'll let me board the plane without it. Odds are, by the time I landed 20 hours from now, I would have it, but I'm a little nervous. I don't know. So I figured I'd do a live stream to kill a little bit of time until that happens. We'll wait another minute or two. I'm having a hard time opening up the chat panel. What's going on? Let's see. There we go. There's the chat. Okay. So I'm just pop that out so I can monitor the chat and stuff. Hope you guys are having a very happy Tuesday so far. How's it going? Fish Whisperer, how's it going? And my handbag and Anthony Sneak, how's it going, you guys? Good to have you here with me today. So, you know, the plan was to talk about the TV show Landman. If you guys haven't heard, I think it's on Paramount Plus, and I had a lot of viewers tell me to watch it, and because they wanted my thoughts about it. And yeah, so Eric, that's what I'm talking about. Is I'm talking about kind of the way the power and influence of the oil and gas companies in media. It's something that they're very good at marketing. For example, I have a video going out hopefully tomorrow, right, Juan, on natural gas, which is again a great name for what's largely methane. But they came up with the term natural gas, and it feels wholesome, and but again, it's just kind of a marketing thing. So I think we'll get started, and I'll leave time at the end to take any questions and whatever else you guys are thinking about, and we can just jam out for a little while. But let's get started, okay? So this will be a podcast episode. So this is the At Odds podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to talk about this one. This is a show that I've been hearing about called Landman, and it's about Billy Bob Thornton, Sir William Robert Thornton, who is a landman in Texas, and he's the kind of the drama that unfolds around his life. First of all, I highly, highly recommend watching this show. This episode is going to be teaser free and spoiler free. I'm not going to give anything away per se. This is going to be talking about something that kind of went viral. In episode 3 of season 1 of Landman, Billy Bob Thornton goes on a little bit of a spiel talking about renewable energy and stuff. And this is the talking point that people wanted me to address, but I think there's a lot more to it. So this is kind of the clip here. I'm not going to play any of the audio, but I'll just play a little bit of this video. He talks about how the footings and the amount of concrete needed for wind turbines, which is true, right? And the reason why they have these wind turbines and this oil patch in the Permian Basin in Texas is to power the drills, right? The wells need energy to run. And he says there's nothing clean about wind turbines, which is kind of the spiel he goes on here. But there's a couple of points about this that I want to address. First of all, he says that the footings can take up a third of an acre. That's probably kind of close, probably a little on the high side. But a 1 megawatt wind turbine usually has around a 15-meter diameter base, and it goes down several meters. The amount of concrete needed to hold up one of these, yeah, it is massive, because the real benefit to wind turbines is scaling them up. The bigger you make them, like, it is cheaper to make them big and to get more power than it is to make them small. So the economies of scale really ramp up with wind in a way that's different in the world of solar. So hey Dar, good to see you from Poland. That's awesome. So wind turbines are big, and you need concrete, which does have emissions associated with it. But everything we do has an emissions associated with it, right? Building new cars, all buildings, dams, bridges, everything. I mean, there's concrete in pretty much all of our construction. So there's nothing uniquely different about wind turbines. The second claim that he makes is actually probably more interesting. He says that in the 20-year life of I think I missed most of it here. But he comes out and he says that in the 20-year life of a wind turbine, it'll never offset the emissions that it produces. Now, this is just not true. If you, by most reports, in fact, here, let me share my Mac. By most reports, a wind turbine will offset the emissions within the first 2 years, and it'll produce all the energy that it took to make it in 6 months. Obviously, there's more to it than just the energy to produce it. There's other things like the concrete and mining and everything else. But a wind turbine will be carbon positive after 2 years. And then for the next 18 years or so, it's pure clean energy. Another point that he makes is that, the lubrication for the big gears and the big shafts in a wind turbine also need oil. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you can imagine how frequently you have to lubricate something. You do oil changes in your car every, couple thousand miles or so. It's nothing compared to the scale at which you're burning something like fuel, gasoline, or natural gas. That one is pretty immediately obvious that that's probably not a big contributor. Another thing that he says is that oil is in everything in our lives. This is actually pretty true, right? Polyester in clothing, nylon is all made from fossil fuels. He mentions like lipsticks, pharmaceuticals. It turns out long hydrocarbon chains are really valuable, and that's why there's always going to be a future for it. We're never going to just turn off oil. I think the argument is that of all the ways you can use oil, like this case on my phone is made out of plastic, right? But I'm going to keep this case for a year or two while I have this phone, and it's not going to get combusted and burnt. It'll be in use for a year. A product like that, there's plastic on this tablet that I'm holding, this little tablet pen that I'm holding. These plastic pieces have long lifetimes, right? Years, maybe even, depending on what you're using it for. So if we made categories of long-living fossil fuel-based products versus short-lived, that probably is the better way to look at it. We need plastic. We need continued refining of fossil fuels for plastic. It goes into lipstick and makeup and so much more. That's all true. Socks is interesting. There's a lot of polyester and things in socks, and yeah, he's right about that. That's for sure. But if we broke it up that way, the interesting part is the argument that most of us would probably make is it's the stuff that you're just combusting constantly that we could probably eliminate or reduce at least, right? So instead of running natural gas into a power plant and combusting it constantly, right? And a steady flow of natural gas comes in, ignites, combusts, steam turbines, produce energy. You can make a wind turbine and have it produce energy for 20 years with no added fuel other than the delta from wind speeds from hot and cold regions and the resulting wind. Or in the case of solar panels, the sun is the fuel source, and it comes up every morning and so forth. So the show is fascinating because I think a lot of people took fault or they thought there was a lot of propaganda because of how they framed this argument. But the reality is most of the show doesn't really go into it. In fact, this part that I just played is pretty much the only real anti-renewable energy propaganda in the entire first season. There's one part where they have a little meeting talking about how, it's very difficult to get loans for things like oil and don't have to raise funds themselves because most banks don't want to touch it. They only want to fund cleaner energy sources and stuff. But we'll get back to that here. The second part about this, he says, I'm just looking at the comments and stuff here. Breathing has emissions. Yeah, it mentions phone cases. So Wave Drive has some comments. We'll address those here shortly. But the bigger picture in this show is actually pretty amazing because what they've done is Billy Bob says in the show, the bigger problem is not burning fossil fuels. It's what we would do if we ran out of them. And I think nobody understands the scarcity of oil and gas like oil men, people who, speculate, get leases on land, mineral rights to do this because it is a very difficult business and it's gotten increasingly more difficult over the years. 130 years ago when they first started, drilling for oil in Texas and other parts of the world, there were huge reserves of oil just right there, a couple hundred feet underground. And it was like an amazing opportunity to produce energy. But those wells, the easy to reach stuff, has slowly been, going empty. And now we're having to get more creative, horizontal drilling, fracking, which is hydraulic fracturing of the underlying rock bed to release the methane and oil that's stuck inside of the shale. And it's getting harder and harder. So what Billy Bob's big point is, first of all, we need it for everything that we do, which is probably true. You couldn't just turn off oil and gas tomorrow. How many of the cars on the road, how many of the buildings, you name it. And the big challenge is, what do we do if we run out before we have an alternative? And he is saying that wind and solar are not the alternative, that we need something else. Maybe he's thinking fusion along the way or something like that. But he's right. The big challenge is that we have to get off of oil and gas before it's too late. Now, I know a lot of, I'm kind of curious about, let me know in the comments how you feel about oil and gas, because I know a lot of my viewers are going to hate it and wish it would be outlawed and banned. But I actually think, before I get more into some of the science of how this will play out, I think it's really important to appreciate oil and gas for what it's meant to us. If there wasn't oil and gas under our feet, if there wasn't coal, if, old life forms, organisms, trees didn't decompose and become fossil fuel the way that it does here on Earth, imagine how the Industrial Revolution would have played out. It would have been very difficult to produce the energy that we needed. Methane and oil and gas are easy to just combust for light, right, and candles, for heat. And then we quickly, introduced steam engines. We were able to harness the power of this fuel very early on. It would be decades before we figured out the photovoltaic effect, for example, and made solar panels. And even when we did, it was wildly expensive. And there's no way we could have powered anything with solar panels. Fast forward to 2025, and now solar is the cheapest way to produce energy there is. It's cheaper than coal, oil, wind, everything. Like, solar is the cheapest. And it's because the panel's gone from thousands of dollars to like $100 for a 400-watt panel. But it took us time. And so fossil fuels, we should all be very grateful that we had fossil fuels, because it's really hard to imagine that we would have industrialized and figured out all the things that we had without it. So, it's easy to like cast villains and pick sides, but in engineering, the really important thing to remember is that everything is a tool in our toolkit, right? And every tool has a purpose. Like, it's not like the minute you get a screwdriver, you can throw all your hammers away, or vice versa, right? Natural gas does have its place. For example, if you live in a region, like if you're in northern Canada where the winters are excessively brutally cold, maybe we do need to pump natural gas to heat homes that way. But here in California, for example, we just really don't need natural gas. If we make the shift to heat pumps for heating, we could eliminate all that infrastructure. I wanted to show you something. This is going to be a prop in a video here coming out probably tomorrow, but this is a natural gas pipe that I just dug out of the building that we're sitting in. I had this fear because I saw the first tip of it where the soil meets this, the steel pipe. But natural gas is piped through steel pipes like this or cast iron, and it corrodes and ages. And this one is in really, really bad shape. I don't want to touch it too much, but as I was investigating, there's a couple of parts here in the tubing around, like here, for example, where we might have had like a pinhole leak, and maybe it was, the soil was compacted enough to keep it all together, but it was kind of a dangerous situation that we were in. And I had this fear in my head because when we first moved into this house, this building had a noticeable odor in it. It was like a natural gas smell, and it gave us headaches. So I got rid of the furnace and the wall and turned off the valve, but I still knew there was natural gas piping running underneath. So we've recently just capped that off. Our goal is to get rid of natural gas entirely and move to all electric for everything, right? So we now have a heat pump pool heater. We're going to have a heat pump furnace pretty soon. Right now, we still have the natural gas for now. We've moved from the natural gas clothes dryer, the tumble dryer, over to a heat pump system. We have a hot water heater to get rid of and to go natural gas. But, we already have electricity piped to all homes. You have to have electricity. Like if there's one critical infrastructure piece, it is electricity. From electricity, you can pretty much do everything else. And natural gas's problem is the big pipelines that run from where it's produced to the power stations. That pipe, I'm sure we will keep up to date, and we will keep, monitor leaks and keep it safe. But when it goes into this size for low pressure to go to millions of homes, that's where how confident are we in the shape of the infrastructure and how safe it is to operate. You've seen, there's at least a couple of home explosions from natural gas leaks every year, and it's kind of scary. So I bring this all up because I don't think that we should be banning things. I think that the technology should always win out. And in the case of heat pumps, we are there. Even in cold climates, there are heat pumps that would work in, negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and it can keep you warm. And hybrid systems can have a resistive element that can turn on if it's excessively cold. But we should think of natural gas and fossil fuels as an amazing starting point. But where in human history have we ever just stopped, right? Gasoline was the first source of energy for the automobile. Actually, electric cars kind of came first, but the battery revolution, the technology needed for batteries would take another 100 years before it caught up to a point where we could drive hundreds of miles. But we're entering that point now. I think the engineering in me kind of appreciates fossil fuels and where it's brought us. Like, it's very hard to imagine if we didn't have that, how we would have industrialized, right? We needed time to be able to produce solar panels or wind turbines and everything else, as Billy Bob kind of says in the video. Honestly, if you watch Landman, I'm curious if you guys have watched Landman. Leave me a comment if you have. Want to monitor the comments? Yeah, let me know. But if you watch that show, yes, this little clip that I showed you about the wind turbines and Billy Bob, he has a little rant, and he's largely right. I mean, yeah, the footings are big. It does take fossil fuels normally to produce concrete, but we do use that for everything. But the things he gets wrong are wind turbines are carbon positive very quickly, like within 18 months to 2 years, entirely carbon neutral at that point. And the other thing is he gets right is that we need to have an alternative in place. So I think they understand that really well. One other thing that Billy Bob says is, as he's pointing around to all the wind turbines, he says that if wind turbines were the answer, that the oil companies would have them everywhere. And there's an issue with that I want to bring up. So part of what Landman does a really good job of outlining is that oil speculators, like people who buy up oil rights or leases and get mineral rights to go dig wells, it's like gambling. The stakes are really high. When you dig 1,000 feet or 10,000 feet, if you don't hit oil, you've just spent like $10 million, $20 million, and you've got nothing to show for it. But if you hit oil, you could be making $100,000 a week or something like that in terms of profit. So it's a really high stakes game. So the first thing to remember is, if you live in a place that has oil, you're going to want to extract it, right? We as humans are kind of exploitative in nature, right? When we have big forests that we can build trees from, we're going to have a logging industry. And so if you have oil, like the Permian Basin here in Texas or Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, these parts of the world that have large deposits of oil, you're going to want to pump it out and produce money and energy on it. The really interesting thing, too, is in all business, you want to establish what's called a moat, right? Something that keeps others from competing with you. For Apple, it's the fact that all their products work together. Even if you make a better phone than the iPhone, it'd be hard for me to switch, because at this point, my photos, my laptop, they all just work together. It'd be difficult, right? So Apple's developed a moat with integration, if you will, right? The oil and gas moat is that no matter what I do, I'm never going to be able to produce my own oil and refine it into gasoline or natural gas at home. I am beholden. When you buy a car or you buy a natural gas furnace, you're signing a subscription, lifetime subscription to oil and gas in a way that you don't if you get a heat pump, because then you could make your own energy if you wanted to with solar panels like we do here. So they have a moat, and they're not going to want to leave that. So what Billy Bob says is, if wind turbines work, they'd build them everywhere. Well, first of all, Texas is building them everywhere. Texas doesn't brag about this very much, but they are like the number one wind and solar producer in America. They've actually overtaken California. I don't know what we're doing here, but Texas understands that producing energy on the cheap is really important. If you remember the freeze that happened in 2021 when wind turbines were seizing up, well, The reason is because they never were weatherized. They weren't built to handle those temperatures, but that's just some money you have to spend to weatherize them to be able to withstand it. And that investment, I do believe, has happened since then. So if you built wind turbines everywhere, and don't forget too, Texas is not connected to the entire U.S. power grid. So, the energy is kind of more localized. So all you could do if you build wind turbines is produce electricity and sell it at a very reasonable price per megawatt hour to other utility companies. But if you dig for oil and gas, you can sell it to people around the world. Liquefied natural gas is sold everywhere. In fact, America over the last 10 years has become the number one exporter of LNG, liquefied natural gas. And we can compress it in pipelines and sell it to every part of the country, right? So it's more lucrative to be in oil and gas is my point. And if you have it when others don't, you have a commodity that is in demand. And every company's goal is to have a subscription, right? You've probably noticed every product under the sun seemingly now has a subscription. They want $10 a month for connectivity, and they want you to buy their ink cartridges, right? If you remember, we don't really print as much anymore, but when I was younger, like when I was in college, all the innovation happening with printers wasn't making the print better. We had pretty good printers. All the innovation was in like DRM and chips to prevent you from buying ink from anyone but the manufacturer. Because what they realized is they sell you a printer one time for $100, fine. But if you want to make your profit soar, you want them coming back to buy your ink. And when ink was expensive, third-party companies showed up that will make ink, will make refillable ink, and then they try to fight that, right? It's kind of how it goes. It's the same reason why I don't have a Keurig for coffee, because I refuse to buy those stupid little pods, all that plastic waste for a single cup of coffee, and I have to buy it from them. No, thank you. I'll just do a drip coffee system, buy my coffee from wherever I like, and make it my own way. But every company does this. They want to have a moat, and they want recurring revenue. And so what you have to remember when you buy a gasoline car or you buy a gas furnace, you don't realize it because you're not literally signing it away, but you are entering a lifetime subscription with these companies because there's no other way to get these products other than from them. I say this now actually because we have a video coming up soon, but I've added a little extra solar to our house, and we have been completely off grid for over 2 or 3 weeks now, even through cloudy days. On cloudy days, we just charge the car less. We don't do other things, but we can be completely off grid, and it feels amazing knowing that we can run our business and our house, our lives, and we don't have to be beholden to anyone. I make my own energy, and I can use it as I see fit. That's a pretty amazing. That's a pretty amazing thing. And so, oil and gas companies are not going to give this up until the end. As long as there's demand, they'll keep doing this, and that's just the way it is. We all get to vote with our dollars. If you want to see natural gas production reduced, you'll have to lower the demand, and the only way to do that is to buy products that don't require it, right? Heat pumps. Heat pumps are the key to most of the world. I haven't really been checking the comments, but I'll turn back here in a second when I finish up this thought. But yeah, so the reason why they don't just build wind turbines everywhere is because the oil company has a more lucrative way of making money. They would be distracted to build wind turbines. But that doesn't mean that they're not being built in Texas. They are. Huge amounts of onshore wind and solar is going in Texas and Nevada, all around the country, because it's the cheapest way to make energy, right? Invest one time, and day and night, new energy keeps being produced with no added fuel. It's an amazing thing. This is the next generation of our story as a species, and it doesn't mean that we should hate on natural gas or make it a villain, because we probably wouldn't be here without it. But that doesn't mean that we should stop there. We had tube TVs. No one misses those because now we have flat screens and OLED. We always progress, and maybe in 20 or 30 years, there'll be fusion energy. And that's the point of engineering, is it not? It's to always keep advancing and progressing. And that's the nature of the human experience, is we never rest. We're always looking for the next thing and the next thing. So that's the part I think that he gets wrong. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the show at large. Again, I'm not going to have any spoilers, but the show is about the utter misery of oil and gas. I mean, it is death and injury, horrible accidents, and paying out claims to families who now have widows. I mean, it is a brutal industry, and like we mentioned, it's high risk, high reward. And so the people who make it big aren't selling a little bit of energy per month and getting a small paycheck. No, they're striking it big with a huge land right. They're selling $1 million leases. It's like hitting home runs, where producing energy with wind turbines would be like hitting a single, right? Just getting on base, keeping things afloat. But with oil and gas, it's like striking for the fences and getting a home run, and that's what everyone's after. And as long as there's oil in the ground and there's demand, it's always gonna happen, right? It is the story of natural gas, and I've covered this a little bit in different episodes, and I know there's a lot of interest whenever I do talk about oil and gas, but hopefully that makes it clear. I almost wanted to make a video about like an ode to like a celebration of oil and gas. Like, we probably wouldn't be here as a species without it, but life is about progress, and we should probably dial that back. I do actually think there's a future for natural gas. I think we should have natural gas piped to peaker power plants where, let's say, for example, you had 5 cloudy days in a row. What are you going to do for energy, right? Especially if we're not building new nuclear, which has become very difficult to do. You want to be able to have natural gas so you can just modulate. The amazing part about a natural gas power plant, you could sit there and produce as much energy by just changing the flow rate and how much production is being consumed. You could power whatever you needed, and it could be turned on and off quickly, which is also an amazing feature. And natural gas can be stored underground for when it's needed. Those things make it incredibly valuable. And I think it should be a part of the world, going into the future. But we probably shouldn't be doing is burning it as a first resort, because it is precious and it is running out. We are running out. The literal show is about oil and gas are going to run out, and everyone's just trying to get what they can now before it's completely gone, and that we need to have an alternative in place. So they nail all of that really well. They do a great job of showcasing how hard the work is. And, for people who work in these fields, it's a chance to make a 6-figure income because of the risk involved. Those are risks that wouldn't exist in solar and wind production. Like, those are not dangerous jobs, so they don't pay the same. But it is a highly speculative thing, and it does give opportunity to people who might not otherwise have anything to do. But the world keeps going on, and we have to keep moving forward. Last comment. Mr. Schneider says, oil gives you a way to store and transport energy. Gasoline has 100 times the energy density of lithium-ion batteries. That's probably about right. Yeah. It absolutely does. Now, it's also kind of ludicrous and silly to think about like liquid natural gas tankers, right? Filling these like circular, you ever seen those ships with like 3 circular bubbles? That's liquefied natural gas. It takes energy to liquefy it. It takes energy to pump it. It takes energy to drive across the ocean and go drop it off to a country like Japan or somewhere. And all that uses up natural gas. So we are at the early points. And part of this too is like, if you went back in time to when the first automobile showed up, people who sold horses had the same arguments. They would make fun of this little car with wood wheels. It only goes 10 miles an hour, and where you're gonna feel it. There's no stations to pump. It's literally the same thing, right? We do this all the time. We just don't realize it. Like when refrigerators were first invented, there was probably some ice salesman who said it was an incredibly dumb idea. It'll never work, X, Y, and Z. This happens all the time. But this is as poor as lithium-ion batteries will ever be. We're kind of in the very infant stages of the technology. And over time, we're going to bring prices down. It's already happening. The price of batteries today is remarkably low, and I think batteries will be a big part of how we stabilize the grid if we have more renewables. But just remember that technology isn't resting. Oil and gas isn't going to get more efficient. We're not going to suddenly have an 80% efficient engine. We're kind of capping out. We're hitting limits of how good this technology can be. And prices will probably go up as, first of all, there's less demand. EV sales are on the upward trend. So as peak oil is hit in the next couple of years and the demand starts falling, it'll be less profitable to drill for oil. And when that happens, you'll hold it back and kind of play the market, keep the prices up. This is going to happen. I'm sorry to tell you, but like oil is not going to last forever. And as Billy Bob so eloquently put it, the danger is that we not have an alternative in place when it does. Because if that were to happen, we'd have like world war and famine, and right, it would be a horrible situation that we'd be in. So it's really important that we start this transition and roll it out before we've completely run out of it. Mr. Schneider says if we can put a nuclear reactor on a submarine, we can make them safe for land. Absolutely. The challenges are around regulatory approvals. Every country is making it harder to install nuclear, not easier. And so now the lead times are 15 years to build a plant, and there's so many regulations and stuff. And this happens all over the world. So I'm a fan of nuclear, I think, especially as another bridge technology. The problem, I mean, there's no right answer to any problem. The problem with nuclear is that you have to take care, after 20 years of useful life, carbon-free energy, you then have to take care of it for thousands of years and protect it. This has literally happened to us here in California. We had an old nuclear power plant called San Onofre, about 50 miles from where we are, and they shut that down about 10, 15 years ago for a couple of different problems that they were coming upon. But you would think, oh, end of story, the plant is shut down, the end. No. They have to pay 24/7 for armed guards and surveillance systems. And they charged us, the ratepayers, for these costs. So we are literally paying in our energy bill for a decommissioned nuclear power plant. And by the way, that waste was supposed to be taken to a long-term facility that the government said they would build called Yucca Mountain. But there was so much pushback from the people of Nevada who didn't want it in their backyard, right? NIMBY, not in my backyard, that it never got built. Try as they might, they tried to build this long-term facility. It never happened. And so that nuclear waste is sitting here on site, not far from where we are, in an area prone to earthquakes, and we could have tsunamis and everything else. It has to be guarded for 1,000 years. That's the problem with nuclear, is 20 years of value for 1,000 years of maintaining it properly. And some countries like Finland are doing this. They're doing a better job of long-term storage. But the U.S. really isn't doing a very good job of that right now, to be honest. Yeah, nuclear waste is a major problem. Again, guys, I think the theme here is there's no answer. Like if this stuff were easy, odds are you're probably missing something. That's a core philosophy of mine, right? These are complicated topics, and we should chat about it. This is part of the fun. This is part of the fun. Stu says Ben Sullins did a couple of episodes on this already. He did touch on a couple of things. One thing he didn't touch on in his video, and Ben is one of my very, very good friends. We're neighbors, actually. We hang out pretty often. But one thing he didn't touch on is that moat idea, right? The idea that the best product you can sell is one that other people can't readily get access to. If I could print something on a 3D printer, so can you. So whatever I'm going to make, odds are you're going to compete with me, sell it for lower. It's very difficult to compete. But if I have gold in my backyard and you don't, then I'm always that'll be the thing that I sell because you can't compete with me. It's just one of those things about business that work. Willow Rock says ban all powered vehicles, bicycles only. I've told you guys many times, I don't support bans on anything. But Willow, I love the concept. What we need to do first is not just bikes, as a YouTube channel that I love watching. We'd have to reimagine cities. We'd have to make it safe to ride bikes and make it easier for people to want to do so. By the way, the other big thing is oil and gas in America is subsidized. That's why it's as cheap as it is. We pay like $100 billion a year to oil and gas companies that are wildly lucrative and productive, when we subsidize their efforts, right, to minimize the risk of new exploration in wells and refining and everything else. Because again, it's a very risky commodity business. If the cost per barrel drops below $60 a barrel, you're literally losing money by extracting it. And if it goes up too high, then people pull back and don't want to buy it. It's a risky thing. So the government sees oil as a national security interest and funds it accordingly. I had this thought recently, actually. In a lot of ways, the oil and gas companies are literally robbing you, okay? Here's what I mean. You pay taxes, right? I pay taxes. The government takes that money and subsidizes to the tune of $100 million a year to the oil and gas companies. So I'm paying taxes. Government takes that money, gives it to the oil companies, and the oil companies sell me oil and make money on it, right? When people have a problem with like the solar credit, like if you put solar panels, you get a 30% tax credit. Here's the difference. When I put up solar panels and I got 30% back a couple years ago, that's my money. So with solar panels, you keep your money, and instead of giving it to the government, who then does whatever they do, you keep your own money. That's the solar credit, right? The other way is a lot worse because it's kind of like robbing you. They're taking your tax money, giving it to an oil company, and then the oil company gets to sell you something. This happens a lot, actually. It's kind of the same thing with pharmaceuticals, where a lot of pharmaceutical research and breakthroughs happen with public taxpayer-funded research. And then we turn around and go, all right, pharmaceutical companies, here's all this free money for all the risk and research. Now that you have what you need, go nuts. Go charge the American people whatever you want in terms of cost per pill, and rake in billions of dollars of profits. We do a really bad job of that. We definitely don't have the taxpayers' interest at heart, and hopefully that changes over time. But it's interesting. Yeah, oil companies have gotten a level of love from the government. It's because if you don't have oil, if you don't have avgas and Jet A, you're not flying airplanes, you're not fighting wars, right? Our carrier fleet is all nuclear powered, but like the destroyers and like the other accompaniment of craft are all diesel powered typically, right? Or diesel electric. And so you can't fight a war without oil. And that's why it's subsidized. And that's why the government wants to have reserves, right? They want to be able to control it and have this, because the tact that we took in World War II with the Japanese was we set up embargoes to keep them from receiving oil shipments. And after a couple of months that they were running low, they had no other recourse but to go up for like a Hail Mary effort and attack Pearl Harbor, because they knew they'd be out of oil. And when you're out of oil, it's game over. So that's why oil and gas have historically gotten the levels of love that they have. But yeah, Glove Arm says the sun is the holy grail of energy. I'll tell you, I've had this thought in my life. God so loved the world that he put a fusion reactor in the sky. And it wouldn't be until, in about the 1950s that we'd figure out the photovoltaic effect. But now that we have that, what a winner that is. Obviously, the challenge is batteries have to be accompanied with solar. So maybe let me see if I can pull up my energy dashboard here. It's one of my favorite things in all the world is solar power and batteries, because when you bring them together, you can actually have a shot of being net zero. Let's see if I can show you this. Yeah. Okay. So I'll show you my screen here. This is my Home Assistant dashboard. See if I can zoom in a little bit. Okay. We are producing 12 kilowatts of solar here. It's probably 2 o'clock. Yeah, right about 2 o'clock. I'm charging my Tesla with 7.5 kilowatts, right? That means my car, let's see if I can pull that up, about 25 miles an hour. I've put 93 miles of range into my car, and I charged my batteries back to full. So the batteries were down to about 27 kilowatt hours left at 7 a.m. before the sun came up, and they're charged back all the way to 68 kilowatt hours. Yeah, I have a really big battery system. The office is not pulling anything. We have 2 solar systems, like I mentioned, and look at that. Today, I could have probably heated the pool, but I decided to charge my car instead. Here's our water usage. Yeah, but this is what you can do. Oh, and we're exporting to the grid. So some of our neighbors are enjoying a little bit of clean energy as well locally, without having to get it from far away. This is what's possible with solar panels. And by the way, these panels require no effort, no maintenance. There's no moving parts, and they'll last for 30 years. I actually sold my first house to move in here, and those panels I got in 2010. So they're 15 years old. And I recently went over and visited the new owner, and I pulled up his data and stuff. They're around 88% output from where they were 15 years ago. They're putting out 88 to the best panel was 90, the worst was like 86. So about 88% of what they were when they were new. And the technology is just getting better and better and better. And those panels will keep making him energy for the next 15 years. It's incredible. It really is. It doesn't make oil and gas the enemy, though. Like, I'd love for us to move away from the stigmatizing and like name calling and stuff. We should be grateful for oil and gas. Like I mentioned, imagine an alternative Earth where humans, evolved, and we were cave people, like hunting and hunter gatherers, and then we started, modernizing and farming, but there wasn't oil and gas in the ground and coal. That wasn't how old organisms decomposed. That civilization probably never reaches space. It doesn't build solar panels. It doesn't figure out how to feed billions of people. It probably stays small. So we should be lucky and grateful for the historical context of oil and gas, and realize that the future is going to be increasingly less dependent upon it. And it's not going to be because of a government mandate. It'll be because of technology and the fact that it's better. I live my life, drive my car, all for free, but under the solar panels that I bought one time, right? It's a killer deal. Before my panels, my home cost me $700 a month in electricity, another $100 in natural gas, so about $800 a month. And if I had, instead of driving electric cars, I had gas cars, it'd be about $350 a month in gasoline. So we're talking about $800, almost $1,200 a month. That would cost me. Interestingly, I've recently figured out two of the reasons why California, and in particular, Southern California and San Diego have some of the most expensive prices in the entire country. One is a thermal solar plant called Ivanpah that recently announced that they're going to start shutting down and ramping down operations in right on the border of Nevada. We had a deal that we were going to buy electricity from them for a very high rate, and we back out of it now because they're shutting down. Now, this is a thermal plant where they take mirrors and heat up a large tower and produce energy via steam. But PV solar is going to be taken off. That one didn't work out. That was one. The second is that we're still paying for nuclear waste at a shut off and shuttered nuclear power plant. And that's going to be, they've been kind of negotiating that out so that we don't have to pay for too much more of that. But the energy company will be paying to maintain that waste for 1,000 years. And those things add up. Bad decisions kind of add up. In a lot of ways, keep it simple, stupid, right? What is simpler than a photovoltaic solar panel sitting out in the sun? Obviously, you have to combine that with batteries, and I'm really happy to say that solar panels are so dirt cheap, it's insane. That there's never been a better time. And batteries are following suit with all the levels of production that's happening, largely driven by China. But it's pretty amazing. So it's a cool way to think about the world, right? I used to have to go wait in line at some Costco to shop for the cheapest gas. I haven't been to a gas station in a very long time. I do still have one gas car for like Home Depot runs and stuff. It's a 17-gallon Honda Pilot, which costs $90 to fill up. So we probably fill it up 2 or 3 times a year, and it feels really painful when we do, because no matter what I do, I cannot produce gasoline at home, but I can produce energy from my solar panels. And Alberto says, rooftop solar makes the most sense because it doesn't eat up real estate. Absolutely. Every home, if you have a roof and you have a decent amount of sunshine production potential, I think every home should have solar because it helps reduce your reliance on the grid. If we keep building new complexes, new commercial buildings, new real estate, we're going to continually put a strain on the grid. But if each home had even a little battery and a little bit of solar, and it could reduce the burden that it was on the grid, it'd be much easier to electrify more stuff more quickly. But at the same time, like in the high desert, in the Mojave Desert, there's no life. Like there are no plants. It's just pure desert. There are some species of animals that we have to be aware of. But building in the high Mojave Desert is great because there's no cloud cover. There's no cloudy days. Here in San Diego, it's mostly sunshine, but we have the Pacific Ocean. So if the marine layer rolls in, it cuts production dramatically. And the Mojave Desert is just a couple hundred miles away, and you can feed one of the most densely populated parts of the country here in Southern California, all from clean sunshine from a plant that is built at scale, right? So it'll be a combination of both. It'll be microgrids and people producing their own energy, storing their own energy, vehicle to grid with cars and stuff. And then also it'll be large scale PV plants. Mr. Schneider says, it feels amazing to be able to be sustainable, knowing if the world goes to crap, you'll be doing great is an amazing feeling, that security. Yes. So I've always said that solar power and batteries should not be a political, it shouldn't be like a liberal or Democrat or conservative type of standpoint. Everybody should be in favor of self-reliance. I mean, I do not need my utility company. I have not pulled a watt from the grid since the new solar array went up. And now we've been, even on cloudy days, like I mentioned, I can't charge my car like I did today. I can't put 100 miles into it. But if you charge the car 100 miles one day, and I drive 25-ish miles a day, I can drive for 4 days before having to charge it again 100 miles. So I can go get past some cloudy weather. But I'm completely completely off grid. So U-Haul says EV fire engines to fight wildfires. There are a couple of use cases where I don't think we again, it's not all or nothing. The answer is not to electrify everything or nothing, and it's nuanced, right? So large trucks, fire trucks, these sorts of things probably can stand to be the last to be electrified, because there's nowhere near as many fire trucks, and they don't do the mileage that average cars do. Sprinter vans, for example, Amazon delivery trucks, those are things that we should electrify, and we can easily do so. But if you have a truck and you drive, you live far away and you're in a very rural area and you haul stuff all the time, by all means, keep it gas. I mean, I just don't think that we're there yet, but give it 10 years. How much better will battery tech be by then, and affordable, and how much range can we get? Probably it'll be pretty great. But for people who can easily, like for me, I make YouTube videos, I pick up my kids from school, I can easily drive an electric car, and for me, it's the greatest thing ever. I couldn't imagine driving a gas car. I don't want to deal with smog checks and oil changes. Like, I don't have to deal with any of that stuff anymore, and I wouldn't go back. But there's no one size fits all. There's a way to get there from where we are, and we should be smart about tackling the big challenges first. Aviation, for example, probably going to take some time to fully figure out. A Redditor says, dude, I live in the Mojave Desert. You're quite wrong. That's nothing to... It's not that we can't easily investigate, right? So let's see if I can pull up a swatch of the Mojave Desert. Okay. So here is... So if you look here, there's some farming and some little things happening around here. There's a big solar farm here. And then you could just... I just picked a random spot of the Mojave. There's nothing here, right? There's just... and I can zoom around a little bit. There's regions. We could power all of California with a little array here in the Mojave somewhere, quite easily. It's doable. I'm not saying the entire Mojave Desert. The Mojave Desert is a large place, but we could put kilometers of solar panels, and that would probably be the easiest way to do it. Yeah. U-Haul says cargo ships are diesel fueled EV. I've actually always wondered, large cargo ships they could stack the crates very high, the shipping containers very high, so it'd be hard to put like a solar canopy. But I secretly, one of my dreams in retirement one day, I want to buy like a catamaran and have complete solar panel cover on top, some battery storage, and then just make it so I can travel 30, 40, 50 miles a day, and then all my cooking and living and electricity, and just travel the world by sea for a year. That's one of my dreams. I'll keep you posted if I ever. It'll be after the kids are out, at least in college. But it is a dream of mine to do that. I love the idea of that. But the challenge is diesel fuel is incredibly energy dense, as others have mentioned. And so what a lot of these ships are is they're hybrids. Like they have electric power plants, because electric motors are the most powerful motors you can get. There's no internal combustion engine that can ever compete with electric motors. That's why EVs are, people kind of take it for granted that EVs are just the fastest cars. They might not have the most range compared to fuel, but the electric motor is tops. There's no internal combustion engine can ever compete with an electric motor. But the fuel supply, the fuel source is the challenge. Now there are talks of building nuclear powered vessels, nuclear powered carriers like the USS Harry Truman that was in that collision recently. But there's a lot of challenges there. I mean, these are ships out in the open waters. What if you're carrying something like natural gas and there's like an explosion or something bad happens? Like, yeah, it'll probably happen. We'll get there a little bit. So a Redditor says, come take a walk. Don't use satellite imagery. I have been to the high desert. I used to work for the Navy, and we used to do mishap investigation. China Lake is out there. They have open airspace to do flight tests and stuff. I've been there a lot. And I hear you, but I've been there. We could do it. There's room in the Mojave Desert for some solar panels. But I appreciate you, and if that's an invitation, I'd love to buy you a beer and we can. The Mojave has. A Redditor says the Mojave has plants and animals. It's not a barren land. I'm not saying that the entire thing is a barren land. That's not what I'm saying. But okay, I'll come visit you and I'll buy you a drink to make up for it. How about that? Mario Lax Lifters says, blink twice if I came across any aliens in the Navy. I did have a top secret clearance for about 6 years. No aliens in my experience in the Navy, but I think Roswell's is an army base, so I don't know. And Mario recently. So Mario met. I think Mario reached out to me when I first started my YouTube channel. He watched one of our videos, and he was thinking about going into a career in software. Congratulations, Mario! I know you mentioned things are going your way, and you're doing well. So proud of you. Keep up the good work. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. Let's do another question. So U-Haul says, why is Tesla being attacked then? Okay, I don't know if I want to get into that. So let me do a little poll. Let's make this a little more engaging. All right, let's start a poll. Do you still like and support Tesla? Yes. No. Start a poll. Okay. I just started a poll. I'm curious about your opinion on this. I have a lot of I used to make a lot of Tesla content. I stopped doing it probably in 2019 just because everybody and their mom was making Tesla channels, and I just got tired of it. I also get bored easily. I don't want to cover any one thing forever. So I moved on to just engineering, sustainability at large, and other things. But I have some friends that still Rob says to put something about Elon in the options list. I actually think that the question is simpler if I don't have anything about Elon. Just, do you still support Tesla? I think Elon's got to be factored into your answer, right? Interestingly, so far, 27 votes. It's pretty much 50-50, which is probably what I expected. I stopped making videos about Tesla, but I still have some friends that do. And I don't envy them because they're always sharing with me just the really hateful comments that they're getting whenever they make videos about Tesla, which for them is all the time because they're Tesla channels. And it's especially bad for my YouTube friends that don't just do Tesla predominantly, but they do other stuff too. So they've attracted, just EV fans over the years. The friends that I have that are just like hardcore, every episode is about Tesla every day, they've reduced their audience to just the hardcore fans, and so they're fine. But if you have any kind of a wider audience right now, covering Tesla's proven to be difficult, and it's kind of sad, for sure, because I think about it. I mean, you can think about it from different perspectives. If you're politicizing it and you don't like what Elon is doing, obviously that's gonna rub you the wrong way, and I understand. I completely understand. I have a lot of friends of that vein. If I had to say, I would do. I would say the majority of my friends or people in my social groups are of the belief that I used to love Tesla, I don't like Elon anymore, and I don't like Tesla anymore. That's probably more than 50% of the people that I know. For me personally, I just I don't think about the political stuff a whole heck of a lot. I still support Tesla and what they're doing because I think, Tesla's probably going to be the largest automaker in America, And my prediction for the future is that it's going to be like Tesla, maybe Rivian, really good lifestyle brands. Lucid is kind of struggling right now. And then I honestly don't envy the other companies like Ford and GM. I don't envy where they are. I think it's going to be a tough sled for them, especially in the face of Chinese EVs that are going to be incredibly cheap. And it'll be what Japan did to the automakers in the 70s. So I still do like Tesla. I think in Elon's heart of hearts, he thinks he's disrupting the government next. First it was automotive, an industry that nobody thought was possible to disrupt, big oil. You've seen all the reports and stuff like big oil's power. I mentioned Landman, which actually was fair. I actually loved the show. Highly recommend, check out Landman. But if you read the articles, these oil companies fund a lot of misinformation campaigns, and they have for years. But even through all that, Tesla's broken through, and they've had lasting impact. Everyone's seen what Tesla's done and wanted to replicate. I don't think Ford and GM do any EVs if it wasn't for Tesla. They just wouldn't. They're kicking and screaming, going back even now, so they probably didn't want to do it. Yeah, U-Haul says it's a kick-ass show. It definitely is. Yeah, the battery tech is going to keep changing. Mr. Schneider says, I love Elon Musk. Seeing him work with Trump is like a wet dream for me. Look, I ran a poll on my last live stream about do you like Elon and Trump or not? Like which way do you lean on the political spectrum? I ask these questions because it's my job to understand you. And when I come up with ideas for videos and stuff, I've always told you guys I'm a very centrist person, and my goal is to bring people together and to go, interesting. I do hate that, but that's interesting. I learned something. And when I ran that last poll, the feedback was pretty much exactly like the American people. It was like 54% I like Elon and Trump and 45% I don't, which is exactly how the American people voted in the last election, right? So I'm happy to hear that, because far too often our world is becoming echo chambers where everybody just huddles together, believe in the same thing, and your whole mind is developed. Every idea that you have is built in a world where everyone agrees with you, and that's a really bad thing. I can't tell you enough how bad that is. If you are a Republican, watch CNN once in a while. If you're a Democrat, watch Fox News once in a while. We really have to meet each other where we are. Otherwise, it's going to be harder to have good discourse. So, the last poll. Do you still like and support Tesla? 56% so far, 52 votes. It's not a huge sample size, but they 56% still do support Tesla. Now, I understand that for a lot of people, political affiliations or how you feel about a brand is as important as the product itself. Again, it's the beautiful thing about living in a free country. Vote with your wallet. Do you, right? I'm not here to convince anybody to do anything else. If there's whatever car you want to buy or drive that reflects you as a person, do it, right? But we do all have that right. For me personally, I've always just loved my Teslas. I drive a Model S now, and I have 350 miles of range, zero maintenance, zero fuel costs. I'm literally charging my car right now, probably for the next hour or so. Yeah, for the next hour. I have it shut off at 3:30 because by then the solar is dipping down, and I turn it off. But I still love my car. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other cars I love. The EV that I most want to buy, I just don't have the money to do it right now, would be the Rivian R1S. I like that a lot. I'd probably rather have that than the Model Y that my wife drives. But the Model Y is so good. It's just so easy to deal with and drive. Charging is no problem. And we just trust it. So we've been there. But who knows? Maybe we'll change our mind and do something different in the future. But I will remind people that, if it's kind of a slippery slope if you expect the leadership of every company you buy products from to be angels. Like, we're all people. We all, whatever. Look at the history of car companies. The South Korean car brands are run by these like these famous families that do pretty shady things. I think they call them chobles. I forget the exact term, but it's this really shady practice where companies like Kia and Samsung kind of run South Korea in a very non-democratic or equitable way. Henry Ford. We don't have to talk about Henry Ford, but he was famously pretty anti-Semitic and was not a, he would not do well today. Let's just put it that way, right? The German brands, the Japanese. Look, I mean, the reality is we live in an imperfect world, and I don't really think about who Elon Musk is when I buy my car. And if you do, then that's cool. That's cool, man. I appreciate it. I'd love to know what cars you guys are buying or what cars you're into. Roberta says, Christopher Titus switched to a Rivian and loves it. I've never met a person who has a Rivian who hasn't loved it. I've never met anybody who had an electric car and didn't love it. I met somebody who recently had a Hyundai Ioniq 5N. And I got to say, I love that car too. A lot to love about it. He loves it, right? I know people who have the Mercedes EQS is their favorite car they've ever owned. When you get the instant power and the no maintenance and the cheaper fuel cost, there's a lot to love. For sure. Hopefully, my rant was fun. You guys had a little chance to appreciate it. I'm kind of going through the comments and I'll just address anything that I come across. So Otto Joe says, corn ethanol is not worth it. Talk about subsidized. That's another interesting one. The fact that it's renewable, because I mean you're growing corn, right? So there's a renewable component to it, which is interesting. But growing crops isn't free. It's water intensive, takes up land. We have people to feed as well, so it's a challenge. If you, instead of growing corn, which you have to water and apply pesticides and manage for months and months to get a yield one time, what if you just put solar panels out there instead, right? That produce energy every day. It'll be interesting to see how the future plays out. The message, though, I always try to convey to all of you guys is that we should be optimistic. I don't know if she's still famous, but one person who I could never understand why people cared about was Greta Thunberg. Just this kid who, I'm not sure what her background was or why but it was all doom and gloom. We're doomed. We got it X, Y, and Z. I never understood that, right? I don't know why we're listening to like 12-year-old children when it comes to really important stuff, especially because like our economies are very much on the line. It's why I don't support bans of any variety. I think we need to invest in technology and let it be better, right? There's no world where I would go back to a natural gas heater. Why would I do that and pay money to some person in perpetuity for the rest of my life when I can just make it at home, right? It's just better. That's why I've switched over. And as battery prices drop another order of magnitude in the next 5 or 6 years, gas cars are going to seem really silly to buy. Now, again, that might not be for every use case because the energy densities are going to have to increase to really make it viable for a truck. I completely understand because I've been there, I've shopped around. I'd love to buy a truck and a fifth wheel and travel the country. But if I have a Ford F-150 Lightning that gets 300 miles of range and I'm towing something, now I'm getting 100 miles of range and I have to plan for stations. We're talking like 80 miles between stops. That's not going to work, right? So maybe not for everybody, but we're going to move in that direction very quickly. And Silink says, I support the workers, not Tesla. I support the workers. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, interesting. The corn ethanol problem, yeah, there's a lot of cost concerns, and there is no magic bullet. We have to just try to see if there's a breakthrough in one of these technologies that makes it possible, right? It turned out with lithium-ion batteries, when like the Nissan Leaf and the early Teslas were first being built, it was an insane proposition to put all these cells into a pack. But that's because the demand wasn't there to produce them in any higher quantities. But when the demand showed up and Tesla says, I want to make 2 million vehicles a year, which means we're going to need this many gigawatt hours of batteries, then there was a commercial interest. There was a profit incentive to build more battery manufacturing. And that's literally what's happened, right? Same thing with solar panels and everything else. So we'll get there. Zach says, what about Lightship? I love the light ship. I was trying to get a price tag on it. Zach, do you know what the light ship costs? The light ship is an amazing EV concept. I actually know the founders. They shared office space in San Francisco with one of my very good friends, Ryan, who runs the YouTube channel Kilowatts. And so I've met with them. I want to go out there, tour their facilities because I know they have a plant now, and I'll make a video about them. But Lightship is this really cool concept. It's a RV, like a fifth wheel or a travel trailer, that when you're traveling, it sinks down. So it kind of like it articulates upward and down when you're traveling. Zach says that the Lightship cost $175,000. I don't have that kind of money, so that's that. There you go. That's the problem. But really cool concept. So it's, folds down. All the cabinets are like on the top, and the countertops on the bottom are down here. And when it goes into travel mode, it all gets shrunk down to a lower frontal area to reduce drag. And it has like 90 kilowatt hours of batteries on board, and it can power the wheel. So when it detects that you're moving forward, it'll power its own wheels to lower the end watt hours per mile on your car, because some of that weight and heft is being carried by the trailer. So maybe if your F-150 had 300 miles of range with a light ship, and it has solar panels on top, so it's charging all the time. Everything that I love about a product is in the light ship. There's also Pebble has a travel trailer as well. And you could maybe, instead of 300 miles going down to 100, maybe it's from 300 to 250 or something like that. And at that point, that could work, right? That's the cleverness of engineering, is finding problems, answers to problems, seeing problems as opportunities. That's when great businesses start up, right? To the point about Landman, what are we going to do when we run out? Well, literally, Tesla was invented, came to life for that opportunity. So when we see problems and challenges as opportunities, that's when great engineering companies normally spring forth. Sixth Sense says, when are you going to do an update on your entire setup as it sits currently with future upgrades planned? You're reading my mind. I've got this trip. Well, we'll see here. It's 2 o'clock. Let's see if I've gotten my email, my visa for Australia. Nope. Oh my goodness. I am 6 hours away and I still don't have it. So if I don't get to go to Australia, maybe we'll make the video tomorrow. But I do have a plan. It'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. I actually have a couple of videos. One of them is my, 3 years later with solar, is it worth it type of thing, an update video. But also, my home batteries are from a company called Franklin Watt Hour. It's a company that I freaking love. I'm up to, I think I showed you guys, I'm up to 5 batteries now. They sent us 2 more to do. We had to pay for the installation ourselves and all the materials and stuff, but they did send us the batteries. I freaking love these guys because what they have is they have this new product, and it's called the AP box. And you run the new solar that you're adding to it, and it'll allow you to add to your solar system without losing any M2. So for anybody who has solar, maybe you bought your house and the previous owners have solar, and in your head, you've been thinking, I'd love to get more because now I have an EV, or I just got heat pumps, I'm getting rid of natural gas, or whatever the case might be. But you're always afraid that the minute you add more solar, your utility company is going to remove your NEM2 and you're going to get bumped into NEM3, which is much less advantageous. Well, with Franklin's battery system, they have a completely permitted legal way with your utility to add new solar, guarantee that doesn't export. If I go back to, if I go back to my Home Assistant dashboard. So I was showing you guys this earlier. This right here, this non-export solar, this is the new system. And what it'll do is if the home demand ever falls when the battery is full and I'm not using enough power, it will shut off. Right now it's producing 5.4 kilowatts, right? The reason why is because the house is using 9 because of my car charging. I'll show you something here. So watching that dashboard right now, I'm zooming in a little bit more, okay? So if I were to shut off my EV charging, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to just shut off my Tesla charging right now, okay? When I do, that Tesla charge level will drop to 0. So let's do that now, okay? Here we go. By the way, I added 106 miles today to my car. Amazing. At 30 amps. Okay, I just shut it off. Watch what will happen now. Now the Tesla went to 0. This data is going to take a little bit longer to update. But this is going to get shut off. This is the non-export, the new solar. And I am not allowed to export it to the grid. But the AP box with Franklin's system will handle this. Watch this. So it's still producing right now. And again, the data is taking some time to come, and this is actually kind of a calculated value. But here, let's give it a little bit of time to update. And what you'll notice is it'll shut off if the home is not using enough power, which I don't believe it will be once I do this. Let's see. And this whole system will kick down. We'll wait here a second, and I'll just keep talking while this happens. So I was able to add new solar, about a 7 kilowatt array over the pool, and do it without losing any M2. And it's because of this system. So that video is coming as well. I was blown away by these guys. Like, their batteries are just world leading. They're incredibly well built. I've never seen a battery that looks more like military grade than this one. I've had them for years. They've been bulletproof, not one glitch ever. I've had power outages and everything else. Tesla's Powerwall is good as well. The reason why I didn't like Powerwall before is because it wasn't lithium iron phosphate. It was using a car chemistry, which doesn't last as long. But they've since sorted that out. We're still waiting for this kickoff. Let's see. There it goes. It just got kicked off. So it just turned off my new solar because the home is not using enough power. So if this array were to be on, it would be exporting to the grid, which is not permitted, not allowed. And so what Franklin does is the minute the load falls, it will shut this off. Now, here's what's crazy, okay? So you notice now it says this value is calculated. That's why it's not showing exactly 0, but it's based on these parameters. But yeah, so now all I have is my legacy system, right? But watch this. This takes about 10 minutes. So I'm not going to wait for it, but I'll show it to you. If I were to hit charge again on my car and the load rose above the new solar production, it'll wait for 10 minutes because it doesn't want to just see a little blip. Like if you run a microwave for 10 seconds or something, that's not enough. If it sustains larger loads than the new production, it'll kick the solar back on. It's just so cool. I'm just obsessed with it. If I'm honest with you, I've been incredibly unproductive lately because I stare at these dashboards and my whole game is I never want the new system to turn off. So I got to make sure my cars are charging, the pool's heating, whatever it is, to put this energy somewhere. So I'm never wasting any of it. And that's kind of what I've been up to. It's really cool stuff. Yeah, but the Tesla Powerwall 3 now is lithium iron phosphate. It'll last a lot longer, which is good. The second reason why I love the Franklin system is if you're going completely like zombie apocalypse ready, the Franklin system can also take in a generator input, manage all of those things, automatically turn the generator on and off. Like if it was a cloudy day, the power was completely gone, there was like a natural disaster or something, it can handle all that and tie into a generator. It ties into a span for all the monitoring, ties into everything, which is absolutely brilliant. It is my current favorite recommendation for a battery system. Everyone is installing it. It's one of the most popular systems here in Southern California right now. And we'll talk more about that. Yeah, so this is the company. I'll have videos soon. And Mr. Schneider says, I love your home projects. Me too, man. As much as I love EVs and cars, it's a car. It has 4 doors or 2 doors. It has 4 wheels and it runs. Ultimately, a lot of these things are kind of the same. But every home is a little bit different. Like I had this when I moved in, running in here. I don't anymore. This is gone. It's completely, the pipe is still underground, but it's capped on the other side. So there's no gas inside of it. And I now have, I need to get a hot water heater here. I want to go geothermal for the heating and cooling for summer and winter. That will be expensive, so I haven't fully committed to that. We probably don't need geothermal here in San Diego because the weather is wonderful 300 days out of the year. There might be like a month of cold and a month of hot, but 10 months of 75 to 85 and low humidity and just perfect weather. So for us, the geothermal is probably not worth it. I might do it just to show the extreme cases of like how good it could be, but yeah. Mr. Chandra says your video on Google's geothermal was awesome. It's a very interesting place we find ourselves where all the Silicon Valley tech companies are now suddenly power companies because they all realize how much power AI is going to be consuming here in the coming months. So they've all kind of got on board. I appreciate that, by the way. And Mr. Schneider, I don't think I've seen you on a live stream before. I normally remember the people that I see pretty often. So I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you guys, man. It's never lost on me the incredible honor that this is. And we did a giveaway. I gave away 4 E-Range EV tires. That was probably to a gentleman named Jonathan who won, and he's going to be taking delivery here shortly. But you know, when we win, you win. We've mentioned this before. We got to figure out what the next giveaway will be. But we're gonna try to do giveaways once a month to all of you guys, and I'll try to go live as much as I can because I need to know where you guys are at. So the Tesla poll now looks like 59% support Tesla and 41% say no. My goal and my hope ultimately is that we can all get along. Whatever, like I've mentioned, my friends have different opinions than I do, but that's what makes it so much fun during a happy hour on a Friday to chat with them and to hear different opinions and stuff. And not fall into the trap of only being friends with people who believe in everything you believe in. That what a boring life that would be. We should take pride in having diversity of thought. I think it makes us all think about new things. Roberta says solar agriculture is taking off. Yeah, so one of the scenes in Landman, and it's probably like episode 8 or so. Again, this is not really a spoiler, but there's a gentleman who says, I've been approached by a solar company that will lease my land and put up panels, and they'll give me like 10% of the 20% of the profit from these solar panels. What people are finding is solar plus agriculture could make sense because, like depending on where you are, the sun is brutal, and not all crops want 12 hours of blaring sun. So a little bit of shade potentially could make them grow better, especially berries. And there's a whole class of crops that do better with partial shade. And so there's a nice synergy because farming is talk about brutally difficult businesses. Oil and gas is absolutely brutal. The work, the hours, the risk, the dangers, the harm to your health, it's bad. Farming isn't bad for your health, but it's really tough to make a living farming. And so what farmers are finding is, if there's a crop failure, there's a drought, something happens that kills all of our crops, which is common. At least we have an array of solar panels that we're selling for electricity and getting paid every month. So I think there's a lot of future there for people who have hundreds of acres and are trying to find a way to make a living for themselves. Games and Drinks has a great question, and this is the question. He says, do you think these home systems will ever hit sub $10,000? Absolutely. Okay. Just like everything else, when there is so much demand for batteries that more and more plants are producing more and more batteries, which is happening, those prices are going to come down. Already, they're coming down. And I actually met up here. There was a conference called Intersolar here in San Diego. And I met one of my friends, Pablo, who was on the last live stream. I don't know if Pablo's on right now. He's probably working right now. But I met up with him. He's a good friend of mine in the industry. He lives in Dallas. And we went to dinner, and he was telling about his new battery company that he works with. And they're trying to be very price competitive. The reality of sub 10K is a year or two. And in the next year or two, it'll be as common as rain. It'll just be as right as rain to get systems of that size for under that price. The problem really is in labor installation for batteries. For solar. This last array, we have a team now, and we're doing a course, by the way, on everything about going solar and batteries, from planning, and you can just hire someone to do it. We'll even have a section on DIY, how to install solar yourself. We've just gone through it. I've learned a ton about all the right ways of doing things, and a lot of the cost is in the installation. I'll give you a quick little breakdown. We installed a 7 kilowatt system for about $7,000. The panels were about 100. It was 20 panels, and they were $140 each. So that's $2,800. We needed 10 microinverters. Each microinverter is good for 2 panels, so we needed 1,400 in microinverters. You can save money if you go with a string, for example. And then there was about $1,500 in racking. So that's all the equipment for installing onto the roof. Another $500 in in wire, 10 gauge wire, 10-3, all the breakers and rapid disconnects and all that kind of stuff. And then let's say $1,000 I had to pay the guys in labor. So we're at about $7,000 for a 7 kilowatt system. If I were to go to a company, like a solar company, that would be $3 a watt. And that would have cost $21,000. So you can start to see where the money comes from. Now, again, you got to make money. Otherwise, there's no business if you can't make money. But the cost in solar is in the installation and the companies. If you could find a way to do it yourself, we're already all day $1 a watt. That's what it costs for solar. Yeah. Mr. Uber Sprite says, I spent 15 years working at a refinery. Many of my friends retired after 25 to 35 years, have either died from or are dying from cancer. Wow, I'd love to chat with you. 15 years at a refinery, 100%. I have nothing but love and respect for anybody who works in any of these industries, man. Like I mentioned, humanity would not be possible without oil and gas. Make no mistake about it. Coal. I had a friend who told me his grandfather worked in coal in I think it was West Virginia, and he died very young, and it was a very tough environment. But I mean, these are people that are trying to make a living. I have mad respect, man, mad respect for all the people that work in these industries, because someone needed to do it, and they rose to the call. I have nothing but respect, and hopefully, the future is cleaner and easier on people than it has been in the past. So Maslow Pavlov says, interested in the value of aerogel paints to reduce thermal loads. That's interesting. So there's aerogel paints, and there's also this, I forget, it's a carbonate. It's like the world's whitest paint. I forget the exact chemical makeup of this material. It was some kind of a carbonate. And it was so white that it reflected, if normal white paint reflects 93% of all sun rays, this was like 99.5% or something, which reduces the need for air conditioning and everything else. Aerogels are a fascinating area of study for insulation, and I'd love to know more about that. I did a little science experiment on a video you guys can find out on a phase change insulation material. So it's basically a material that freezes in the night and then melts during the day, and all the while absorbs this huge amount of thermal energy without changing the temperature beyond its threshold. It was a fascinating thing, and I'll try to do more things like that around the house. My house is super drafty. It's old. My friend Matt Farrell, who built his house from scratch, has this like 8-inch thick walls, and his house is like perfection. My house is the opposite. There's a lot of work to be done for sure, but hopefully over the years I'll get to it. It is really expensive. That's the prohibitive part. And I appreciate you guys for watching. That's why we have sponsors. I mean, we're trying to do this. I want to give away a full solar system to a viewer every year. That's still on the horizon. It's March. I got a couple months to figure out a way to do that. I've got big plans, guys, and that's why we got to take sponsors. We need viewership. And I think we can, with your guys' help, we can do it. We'll have some fun and cover as much fun, cool stuff and give you the nitty-gritty of the details as we can. So I should probably wrap it up here. I really appreciate all of you. The bottom of my heart, thank you guys for watching, being the best part of what we do here at Da Vinci. Don't be shy. Leave us your comments. Let us know what videos you want us to make. Write to us. A lot of you guys write to us with questions and comments and stuff. And whatever platform, at Da Vinci on X. If you have ideas for future videos and stuff, we'll do it. And until next week, we have a video coming out tomorrow. Hopefully I'm in Australia this afternoon, this evening. It's not looking good, but anybody who's going to be at the Everything Electric show in Australia, definitely come say hi if I make it out there. And I appreciate you. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of your week.